Lately, I've been thinking about the people who've impacted me the most in my life. Creators, thinkers, and honestly, even strangers. And how these people will probably never know that they've contributed something so meaningful to my life, whether it's an altered perspective or a change in my own worldview, or maybe it's just, I hear a song and I'm influenced and inspired to create something of my own, and then the whole trajectory of my life and my creativity is altered. Unfortunately, we rarely tell people when their work really moves us. We fall in love with the creations of others constantly, but this sense of distance or irrelevance, or maybe even just the vulnerability of sharing how someone else's work impacted us, prevents us from being really open with other creative people a lot of the time. I was sitting on the beach yesterday and I was listening to a Reed Willis album. The sun was out, it was a really beautiful day, and I had my journal with me. So I started just kind of brain vomiting and just processing some ideas and thoughts. And something just kind of cracked me open. It was like this input of music sparked an output from me, and that output is now turning into something new, which is this video. And so I was just thinking quite a bit about this cyclical nature of creativity and how, of course, we all influence and inspire each other. But I think there's something even deeper to it. I think it's more than just appreciating a piece of art and then wanting to create something similar. I think that's often how we kind of consider inspiration. Like, oh, I listened to an album and it gave me an idea of how I want to produce a track. But I think there's something really interesting about inspiration crossing different modalities of expression, if that makes sense. So, I engaged with this album and it made me want to write, and now I'm creating a video based on what I was writing. So I just think that that's kind of interesting, and maybe like a less obvious way that we sort of transfer insight. So all this made me think about how we're constantly trading ideas, and we could just call it inspiration, but again, I think that word is missing some sort of substance. We create things obviously from what we absorb, and then we put them back out into the world for other people to absorb, and then they create something, and it's just this constant cycle. And I think that is where the magic of creativity really lies, is that our world is really just a culmination of a million different ideas, and they are reshaped and restructured and sculpted in new ways by different minds and different perceptions. We interpret the input differently, and then we create distinct outputs. And this is because we're perceiving things obviously through our own filter, like our own lens of beauty or inspiration or whatever moves us. Again, this isn't profound, but I think it's important to talk about. This thought about this cycle of inputs and outputs was just really getting me to think a lot about why it is so important that we share our work, even if we are doubtful that it has value, because we don't really get to decide, right? There is this sort of unanticipated outcome when we share our art, where either the person receiving the input will place more or less value and meaning on the thing that we've created than we put onto it when we created it ourselves. I know I'm saying input and output a lot, but so yeah, we need to share our work, right? And I think that creating in whatever format feels the most fulfilling to you is like the continuation of a chain of events. And it's like a response to this really important call or something like that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that even if it feels weird or uncomfortable, or we question the value of the things that we put out into the world, we should still do it, because it feels as though this cycle of inputs and outputs is sort of an inbuilt part of our humanity. And I think that by exploring that, we become more connected to the people around us, the environments around us, and we also develop a better understanding of ourselves, because we're constantly reflecting our kind of inner world, like we're bouncing it off of these outputs of other people. There are times in our lives where we encounter things that really truly move us on like a deep human level. And maybe it's an album you listened to when you were in high school, or it was a piece of art you saw in a museum the first time you ever went there, or it's just something that caught you off guard that is forever imprinted in your mind. I was thinking about how in high school I was introduced to the Mars Volta and Animals as Leaders. And these two bands have followed me throughout my adult life and have changed my perception. They have changed the way that I listen to music, They've changed the way that I perceive sound, and they've also changed the way that I understand myself as a creative person. These sorts of moments really impact the way we grow and the way we evolve and challenge ourselves and see the world around us, and really shape the way we hope to influence the world. I think that we also see ourselves as so separate from the people who inspire us, that we ourselves couldn't possibly be capable of having this meaningful effect on others that we experience when we encounter works of art that we love. But your art and your voice and your input that is received by somebody else could be the thing that changes them. It could be something that allows them to see the world through a different lens, and that could be a really beautiful, positive thing. You could think of this in a number of silly, simple ways. Maybe you have a conversation with somebody, and then 20 years later, that conversation is still burnt into your memory and had some sort of really beautiful impact on your life. I'm thinking of a specific conversation I had with somebody who I used to work with who is vegan, and I didn't understand veganism at the time, and she explained it to me and helped me understand it and made it this approachable thing, and now I've been vegan for almost 12 years. One person was able to influence me to change the decisions that I make every single day in my life over a decade later. That is really powerful. Beyond just obviously conversations or sharing insights and opinions and things like that, when we're talking about creativity, this is a really potent thing, because art is such a human expression, and it's such a way for us to communicate things that are maybe more abstract or challenging to communicate. Even though you might feel very separate from the people who you're inspired by, I think it's important to just bear in mind that your work could live inside of the heart of another human being for the rest of their lifetime. This ecosystem of numbers that we live in has a really negative impact on us sometimes. We sort of filter the world through the algorithm. Things that are deemed as good or bad or beautiful or insufficient creatively or whatever are sort of fed to us through these numbers that we're constantly exposed to. This filter or this lens that we have with all these numbers constantly inundating our brains detracts from the beauty of our impact. If you're able to move 10 people to think and feel and reflect on something meaningful, that's crazy. I think it can be really easy to feel discouraged when, for example, you share something that you poured your heart and soul into and you only get 100 views on it. That might feel sort of shitty. Again, when you see that there are other people who are thriving in online spaces and you just wonder why you can't get to that level. It is very important to reframe those 100 views. We are being encouraged to view those as just statistics and not as human beings with complex emotions and feelings and desires and motivations on the other side of the screen. So 100 people engaging with your work, that's a pretty remarkable thing. Don't overlook that just because maybe you're not where you want to be yet. It's just sort of a side note. It's easy to convince yourself that your work is not worth sharing, but it is. Kind of tying this together, we don't often tell people when their work really truly moves us. And we also operate in such a way where when we share work, we expect that people will tell us how moved they were by us or how amazing we are. And so I just want to say with that in mind that you never know who you change or how you change them, or who you help is maybe a better way to put it. Think about how many people really have helped you and encouraged you and pushed you in a positive direction who you've never said a single word to. And just know that there are people out there who look at you and think that you're really, really cool or think that you're really creative or wonderful, and they're just too shy or they feel too vulnerable to say, hey, you're killing it. So I guess a lot of this video sort of comes from me feeling like I often don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I feel this pull a lot of the time to create something, and I don't quite know what that something is. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel that way. This feeling can lead to a sense of paralysis. It can feel like, oh, well, why should I even share my work? I don't even know what I'm doing or what I'm working towards. I'm rambling. I'm really just rambling. So maybe this way of talking about inspiration is sort of abstract or silly, or maybe it's totally obvious. But for me, when I reframe creativity as this idea of inputs and outputs, It eliminates this sort of rigidity or scariness of creativity because it gives it this quality of like connectivity instead. And it's more like this like transient exploratory opportunity to participate in this massive expression of our humanity through art. Follow the inputs, make your own outputs. The next time that you find yourself really enjoying and appreciating the output of somebody else's creative passion or whatever, I want to challenge you to just let them know. And maybe they won't respond to you, maybe they won't ever see your message, but maybe you will make their day and make a connection with somebody who inspires you, and I think that's a beautiful thing. If you have ideas of things that you want me to talk about or things that you'd like to know more about with my creative process or some of the things that I'm involved in, let me know. Maybe I'll make some more videos about things that you guys like.